Now, from Wish TV, your local news source, this is All Indiana Politics.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome to another edition of All Indiana Politics. I'm Phil Sanchez. Voters in Southport will decide who will lead their city for the next 4 years. Southport is one of the 4 cities in Marion County that are not part of the consolidated Indianapolis city-county government. Our government reporter, Garrett Berquist, sat down with both of the candidates for mayor. We begin with the incumbent, Republican Jim Cooney.
Let's bring in Jim Cooney. Jim, thanks for dropping by today.
Hey, you're welcome. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the invite.
Why are you running for another term as mayor of Southport?
I feel like I've accomplished a lot in the first 4 years, and there's things that I'd like to continue and finish up in the next 4 years. I think we've made some great headway, and I want to keep that going.
What are some things in particular from your first term that you want to continue to a second?
Economic development is really high on my list. We've got a 4-story, 92-unit apartment building that I think we're going to do groundbreaking for within the next 30 days, right across the street from the Perry Township Academic Center by the railroad tracks on Southport Road. And I see that as a catalyst for further development. I've also been working on developing good collaboration and relationships with the businesses in town. And we've got a new parks president, and we're ramping up events, a little bit different subject focus on some of the different things. And I just feel like another 4 years and I can accomplish those kinds of things and lead Southport further into the future.
Since you mentioned economic development, Southport is landlocked and you've got less than 1 square mile of land to work with. How do you work around that in terms of economic development and then also maintaining affordable housing?
One of the tools we have, like most other cities, is a redevelopment commission. And in the current agreement that we have with Rebar Development, we used our redevelopment commission tools. That's our biggest help. We have a small budget, and so we have to be clever and resourceful. I've been trying to work with different developers to point out our location is similar to what you would hear from a real estate agent: location, location, location. So we're trying to capitalize on that. And in terms of affordable housing, we have 2 different housing stocks. There's a very old part of Southport, and then there's a newer addition that was built in the 1960s and 70s. And I think the housing that we have is really quite good. We're in Perry Township with Perry Township schools, so we have a lot to offer. We just need to kickstart our downtown development, and I think our apartment building will do that for us.
How does Southport deal with the risk of crime spilling over from the surrounding city of Indianapolis?
Actually, Southport is like an island. There's very little crime in Southport. Our police department spends the majority of its time helping IMPD with different runs given the current climate. We have 24/7 coverage. We have 3 paid officers. In the last 10 years, we've upgraded our equipment, our patrol cars. We believe in community policing. It isn't just about writing tickets and citing people. It's how can we help the community? What can we do to develop a good relationship? We have the National Night Out in August, and it's very widely attended by residents in Southport. So we try to do way more than just be, issuing citations and that sort of thing. And it has worked phenomenally. As I said, we are constantly helping IMPD, which is fine, but the crime really is around us, but not within Southport, and the residents really appreciate that, knowing that there's routine patrols, and if there's something that were to happen, the police department's on it.
Now, Southport PD has far more assigned radio frequencies than it has officers. How long is that going to go on? And does the city have to pay insurance for all that equipment?
Regarding the frequencies, I think that's in an effort to communicate with IMPD. I'd have to get back to you on the insurance aspect of it, but we're going to send our officers out there into harm's way, and we believe in providing them with the equipment that they need that's appropriate, and we update. For example, the ballistic vests, we need to update those every so many years. We definitely keep track of their equipment and what they need and what we might need to acquire into the future.
How sustainable is it to have a police department with so few full-time paid officers and so many reserve officers, particularly given the city's budget?
It's very sustainable. We've been doing it for about 10 years, and we've been trying to increase the paid number of officers that we have as the budget allows. We take a look at where we're at, and then we make provisions for the future, trying to forecast where our budget might be down the road, and then plan accordingly with the police department.
Does a city the size of Southport, both geographically and in terms of population, need a police department? Have there been any conversations about turning that over to IMPD?
No conversations about that. The city's very pleased with the police department and proud to have its own department. I don't think that would ever be a conversation.
What makes you the best person in this race for this job?
I have experience, I have an excellent track record, and I like getting out into the public. I want to be on the streets talking to people. I have 2 doggies that I walk twice a day, and I'm available anytime, any place for questions. People call me at home, they stop me on the street, and I work for the best interests of Southport. I'm only interested in this for public service, and the last 4 years has clearly shown that.
All right, coming up, we hear from Cooney's challenger, Heather Newport. Welcome back. Southport Mayor Jim Cooney faces one challenger in November. Heather Newport is running as an independent candidate. She's currently a member of the city's redevelopment commission. She talked to our Garrett Berquist about her decision to run.
With us now is Heather Newport. Heather, thank you for coming in today.
Thanks for having me.
Why are you running for mayor of Southport?
So I moved to Southport about 20 years ago, and when I moved there, I joked, hey, maybe someday I'll run for mayor. And it really was a joke at that time. And then during the pandemic, I got more involved in politics in Southport, started going to city council meetings. You know, about 2 years ago, I joined the redevelopment commission, and I realized that there were some things going on in Southport that I wasn't happy with. And I felt like if I really wanted to make a change, running for mayor was the way to do it.
You're running as an independent. There are only about 20 or so mayoral candidates running as independents this cycle. Why did you choose to do that?
So in Indiana, your party affiliation is really set by how you vote in the primary. And when I looked at my voting record, I'm really split. Sometimes I vote Republican, sometimes I vote Democrat. I really vote for the person, not for the party. And I felt the best way to represent Southport was to run as an independent, because that's really where my views are. And I also feel like the role of mayor of Southport is to serve everyone in the community, regardless of what your political affiliation is.
You've said Southport's leaders need to have a community-first mindset. What do you mean by that?
I really feel like, you know, Southport is a very small community. It's a unique situation with the city within a city. There are about 2,000 residents, about 750 homes. And in that community, we have a wide range of ages. We have a wide range of demographics, really. And I feel like the current administration is catering to a very small subset of the population. And what I really want to do is I want to see the boards in Southport, the commissions, all be more diverse. I want to see representation. I think that matters. I think, you know, we have a larger population of Burmese in Southport, and we have no one who represents them. I want to see those people be represented in those committees as well.
Southport, as you alluded to, is landlocked and has less than 1 square mile of land to work with. How do you work around that in terms of economic development and then also maintaining affordable housing?
Because a lot of the homes in Southport are older homes, they're grandfathered in for property taxes and they have different caps on them. And so we don't have a lot of money coming into the city. I think that is a big challenge, because one of the things that we do have that's fantastic in Southport is our police force. And one of the challenges we're having now is how do we continue to get good people and retain top talent on that police force with the budget that we currently have. And that's something that I'm really interested in getting into, is looking at the budget and seeing how we can rearrange money, see what opportunities we have for economic development, and go from there.
Since you brought up the police department, how does Southport deal with the risk of crime spilling over from Indianapolis?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very real concern. And Southport has been very lucky that we're insulated. You said we're less than 1 square mile, and we really have been insulated from those, from that crime spilling over from Indianapolis. And one of the main reasons is our chief of police. Chief Vaughn is fantastic. And what he does is he goes out into the community and he meets with other law enforcement agencies, and he really tries to develop a partnership with them so that we're all working together.
Southport PD has far more radio frequencies assigned to it than it has officers. How long would that go on, especially if you were to be elected mayor? And how does the city pay for the insurance and all that extra equipment?
Yeah, so the city, like I said, doesn't have a lot of money coming in. And one of the things that we need to look at is what do those revenue streams look like and how do we get more? To be honest, at this point, I don't know. I don't know how long it'll go on because I need to get in there and I need to really understand why it's happening before I can tell you how it's going to be fixed.
Given the small size of Southport, does it need a police department? Is this a situation where you might need to end up turning some of those responsibilities over to IMPD?
I don't think so. I don't think we should be turning them over. Let me clarify. I think Southport very much needs to have a police force. Like I said, we are working with other police forces. Homecroft is very close to Southport, and that's one that we work very closely with. You know, it's not a huge force, but I think that it really does a good job of keeping Southport safe.
What makes you the best choice for this job?
I think that I have diversity of thought. I think that I come from a point of inclusion where I really want to make Southport the kind of community where neighbors help neighbors. Everyone knows each other. I'm not going to say everyone gets along. That's never going to happen to where everybody sees eye to eye. But I want it to be a situation where if I see something suspicious at my neighbor's house, you know, I'm going to investigate it. I'm not going to look at it and say that's not my problem, and I want my neighbor to do the same.
All right, coming up, Indiana's best political team looks at the budget stalemate and the UAW strike, plus more. And welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we welcome in two members of Indiana's best political team, Republican Mario Mastrolamani and Democrat Laura Beck. Good to see you both. Let's begin with Attorney General Todd Rokita this week. The State Disciplinary Commission, as you very well know, recommends Rokita be reprimanded or possibly even suspended because of his comments about Dr. Caitlin Bernard. Mario, should he be disciplined?
So there's a state law that he could potentially be facing. And then also, most people don't realize, but there's a code of ethical conduct that attorneys have to adhere to and abide by. And so under that ethical professional rules of conduct, he could be disciplined for that. I don't think it's going to be that serious. If he is disciplined, I believe it's going to be a public reprimand. He probably should have waited until they filed the complaint against the doctor before he started speaking on it. And, you know, I think as many people know, Todd Rokita loves to get involved in every fight possible, and he probably should have waited a little bit before he got involved in this one.
Laura, if the Supreme Court does discipline Rokita, is a reprimand enough in your opinion, or should the court actually go ahead and suspend his law license?
Well, I think, Todd Rokita's behavior in the Caitlin Bernard case, and really in many cases that he does, it's very on brand for him. He uses taxpayer money, and he should not use that to boost his conservative profile on a national level. And that's just something that he's done, he's always done, and he'll continue to do. That behavior in itself is questionable, and I think he should be reprimanded for that. But I also think that he is is especially in the Bernard case, he really overstepped his bounds. He shouldn't have done that. That is beyond the rule of what the Attorney General does. I think there should be consequences for his actions. Yeah. Absolutely. Will it stop him? Probably not, because I think it boosts him in conservative media circles where he wants to be.
Well, we'll see what happens with that. Other headlines that we want to talk about this morning, though, UAW has expanded its strike to 38 locations. As you know, no Indiana facilities are included. But Stellantis has threatened to lay off 300 workers at its 2 Kokomo facilities. Laura, Stellantis says UAW's demands would hurt their ability to transition to electric vehicles. Do they have a point? And does the EV question put the Biden administration in a bind here?
Well, I think that's what they're playing from their playbook, because what they don't want to tell you and what they don't want to talk about is the fact that the Ford CEO made $21 million last year, and that's 280 times more than the typical workers at the company. That's just an example of Ford. So I think what the big three are doing is they're making Biden and electric vehicles into the boogeyman, when that's really not the problem. The problem is you have this incredibly just this massive divide between executive pay and worker pay. And what the UAW is doing is they're fighting for reasonable wages. They're fighting for retirement pension. They're fighting for benefits, and they're fighting for their workers. And so I really think that's the tactic of the big three. I don't know if it's going to work, because one of the things that Mario probably sees as well is the messaging from the UAW is class warfare works. When you start talking about corporate welfare, when you start talking about executive pay, that works, that moves the needle. And sometimes in these strikes, you have to, having been on, worked with labor on strikes before, you have to find ways to move the opposition in the court of public opinion to get them where you need them to be at the bargaining table. Yeah,
to that point, Mario, the big three, as Laura pointed out, has made record profits for years now. Car prices have risen despite worker pay remaining flat. So are the UAW's demands reasonable, in your opinion?
I don't think they're reasonable, but whenever anyone comes to start negotiating, right, they ask for their laundry list of things that they want, and then they understand that any negotiations requires compromise. And so I looked at some of the union demands. The percentage that they want increased in pay, I think, is not feasible, and I don't think it's rational in getting that done. However, that's their kind of wish list. They understand they're going to have to compromise. They're starting at probably an unreasonable amount, and there will be some compromise. I think the biggest problem is Joe Biden right now has an approval rating of 34% nationally. And if the UAW continues to stop some of these plants and car prices start increasing and people are out of work, the economy is going to take a toll. And I don't think that Joe Biden and Democrats can afford that.
Yeah, so we'll see on that one. Speaking of national politics, there's currently no sign of a budget deal in Washington, guys. Republicans in the House still refuse to budge on their demands. Mario, the Senate has signaled it will start sending short-term bills to the House. What are those odds that that's going to pass the House? I want to get both of you in. I have a minute left, so quickly.
I think the biggest problem right now is that we have people on both sides that are unrealistic. They love to be bombastic, and nothing's going to get done unless both the moderate Republicans and moderate Democrats come together and have a compromise. We do need to do something about this spending that we have, the debt ceiling. We have some serious spending issues that we need to address. And I'm hoping that people on both sides of the aisle, the reasonable people, come together and work out a resolution, because right now I think people are just trying to get as much earned media as possible by saying some of the most ridiculous things possible.
Sure. Laura, 20 seconds left. Take us home.
It's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, do your jobs. We are paying, especially these members of the Republican Freedom Caucus. We pay your salaries. We pay your benefits. If you don't want to be a member of Congress, then don't run for Congress, and you want to tear government down. Do your jobs and get a budget, and don't shut the government down.
Good to see you both. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you. We'll be right back.
Have a good one.
Take all Indiana politics on the go with you. Download our podcast now. Part of the All Indiana Podcast Network and allindianapodcastnetwork.com.
Thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics. We'll be back here next Sunday morning at 9:30. You can also hear the extended version of today's interviews with the two Southport mayor candidates on the All Indiana Politics podcast at wishtv.com. Have a great rest of your weekend.